Hello everyone. I'm sorry that we had to take a 2-week hiatus. Last week I was down sick and not able to make a video, with the week before being taken as a break to learn the Latin Mass parts for the Lenten season. As we return to our journey through the Mass, we must acknowledge that the Mass is actually two liturgies in one. The Liturgy of the Word is the first half, and the Liturgy of the Eucharist is the second half. In the dinner party model that we've been using, the Liturgy of the Word is the social part, and the Liturgy of the Eucharist is the actual meal. These two liturgies are split by the Creed. The word creed comes from the Latin word credo, which means I believe. A creed is a statement of beliefs. The Declaration of Independence and the preamble to the Constitution are both examples of political creeds. In the Church, we started with the Apostles' Creed, which is believed to be formulated towards the end of the Apostolic era, around the time when the Apostles were dying off. Though we aren't sure of the exact date, as this is during the persecution era of the Church, when concrete data is very lacking, until Christianity was legalized in 318 AD. What does seem likely was that the early Church wanted to make sure that the faith was preserved as it had first been taught by the Apostles, and wrote out a declaration of beliefs that could be memorized by all believers. As I have mentioned in earlier videos, this time of persecution added a lot of chaos into the Church, as it was forced to operate in secrecy for nearly 200 years. During those first few decades after legalization, there was a lot of public debates about the teachings of the Church, which led to many heresies. So the emperor called all of the bishops of the Church to gather outside of the new imperial capital of Constantinople, in a small town called Nicaea. This became the Council of Nicaea, which of course is where the name Nicene Creed comes from. While there, the bishops agreed on a more nuanced statement of the faith, taking the Apostles' Creed as a foundation and clarifying some of the points that they had just hashed out with the heretics. This is why the Nicene Creed is longer than the Apostles' Creed. The Eucharist is a joining together of the mystical body of Christ. This is why we call it Holy Communion, which means that we have to be fully initiated into the Church, believing what the Church believes, in order to enter into this common unity between our brothers and sisters and God. During the 400s, 500s, and 600s, the Church was continuing to battle the old heresies from the chaos period, as well as newer versions of those heresies. So the Creed was added to the liturgy as a reminder to all who attend the Mass that they are joining together in Christian unity, believing what the Church believes. That being said, all people doubt from time to time. I usually find that my doubts are my mind rejecting a piece of the teachings that I misunderstand. Catholic Church teaches faith-seeking understanding, that our faith is not blind, but is slowly integrated deeper into ourselves through prayer and study. So doubting a truth of the Church isn't an issue so long as we are actively trying to understand it, by studying the doctrinal statements of the Church, studying the historical wisdom of the saints, discussing the doubts with others who are strong in the faith, and most importantly, bringing it to God in prayer. Where a doubt is dangerous is when it is ignored, simply saying, well, that doesn't make sense, and I don't believe it, while making no effort to come to an understanding of what is actually being taught. This is a break within the unity of the faithful with God. In such cases, where there is persistent and defiant doubt in a person's heart, they should be refraining from receiving the Eucharist until such a time that the defiance is healed. So we say the Creed at the beginning of the liturgy of the Eucharist, as a reminder to all the faithful of what we believe, and as a filter to those who do not yet believe, who have not yet been initiated. should not simulate entry into a unity of which you are not yet a part of. If you are attending the 11 a.m. Mass during Lent, you will see us dismiss the catechumens, the people preparing for initiation into the Church at the Easter Vigil. We call these dismissals scrutinies because they are symbolically scrutinizing whether or not they are prepared to enter into unity with us. These dismissals always take place before the Creed, unless Father forgets and starts the Creed on autopilot, because they have yet to make their profession of faith at their baptism. The Creed itself is a synopsis of the basic teachings of the Catholic faith, so much so that the Catechism devotes over 250 pages, nearly a third of the entire Catechism, just to briefly going over the Creed. As such, breaking the Creed down and going through it line by line is really outside the scope of this series, and maybe a future series after I finish going over the Liturgy. One final thing to mention is that both the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed are listed as options all year for the Mass. I personally think it is important to draw attention to both of them and find that switching things up throughout the year helps us to focus more and not just run on autopilot through the liturgy. As Advent and Lent are somber times of preparation and penance, I've asked that we use the Apostles' Creed during these seasons, switching back to the Nicene Creed for all other seasons of the year. This is a personal preference that I picked up at another parish and decided to implement. So please don't tell other priests that he's doing it wrong just because he isn't doing it this way. Next week, we will move on to the prayers of the faithful. God bless.